You're in the right place at the right time. We're here live on TMC. Today we have Counselor Carmen Sabater with us. Counselor, we are so glad to have you with us today.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Wonderful, wonderful. Guys, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna play Carmen Sabater is a I didn't say the title of this show is gonna be Carmen Sabater in the Fight for Justice. She's a retired New York PD police officer, as well as now she's a Los Angeles attorney of counsel. And so she's run the full gamut of the law. And so she's gonna be here giving she's gonna be giving us her expertise. And now we are going to play our promo, and I'll see if I can get my words together by the time we get back. Once again, we are back with Counselor Carmen Sabater. We're so glad to have her with us today. She's a retired New York Police Department officer, a current attorney of counsel in Los Angeles, California. Sunny Los Angeles, California. Send us some of that sunshine. Go ahead and box some of that stuff up in South Carolina. Our weather is so fickle, Counselor.
I most certainly will, but I think it's important to stress that I'm a civil rights attorney.
Yes, and she is a civil rights attorney. Exactly. Absolutely. You guys have any questions? Please chime in. We have the expert with us today. We're going to talk about the recent rash of police shootings of blacks and other minorities. We're going to talk about predatory policing, extreme excessive force, and some nuggets she has gathered along the way. And I'm just so glad to have you. I'm sorry that the date was wrong, but you know we were crossing wires. I was trying to get her in here, and I'm so glad to have her here with us today. We're gonna go ahead and start off. Oh well, it didn't do. Oh, yeah. We're gonna go ahead and give her some applause for being here with us today. How are you doing today, Counselor Sabater?
I'm doing good. I'm doing great. I'm doing awesome.
Well, wonderful.
Fighting for the rights of my clients.
Wonderful, wonderful. We're glad you're fighting the good fight for the rights of your clients. Let me ask you, we're going to start off with our first question. You've been around the law all your life. What motivated you to become a New York police officer, and what initially piqued your interest for the law?
Well, I grew up in the South Bronx projects. So although I always wanted to be an attorney, college was not a foreseeable future for me. In fact, my high school counselor, when I told him that I wanted to become an attorney, he said, "Oh no, you can never be an attorney. You need to take some secretarial courses and then, just be a secretary." And I was like, oh, wow. Okay. And then my brother, my older brother, he had gone into law enforcement, and he said, "Hey, you know what? you're old enough to take the police test. Why don't you take it? And I said, oh, okay. I like the law. So I said, okay. So I took the police test. And then at the age of 20, I was being sworn in as one of New York's finest.
Well, that is wonderful. Have you ever seen that counselor since becoming an attorney?
Have I ever seen what? Excuse me.
The counselor that told you, no, you
Oh,
need to take some
actually,
course.
no, I never did. No.
Well, I hope the counselor's watching this show today.
Right.
What is your area of expertise when it comes to the law? And how long were you a police officer, and how long have you been a lawyer?
Well, I was a police officer, NYPD police officer for 10 years because I was injured in the line of duty. So then I retired from that. And then I've been a civil rights attorney for the past approximately 6 years. So, and my expertise, I will have to say, lies in picking out cases that are ripe for litigation, being able to analyze these cases for their weaknesses and for their strengths. And I like to say that when it comes to like doing the police excessive force, police brutality cases, I have an expertise in reviewing the documents because I understand the documents. I understand the police jargon. I understand how to review the excessive force reports, the witness statements. And then with all of that knowledge, then I go and when it comes to depositions, I'm really good at taking depositions, and I'm really good at asking the questions and hearing what the officers are not saying, and then asking great follow-up questions. That's the most important thing, because when you ask these follow-up questions, you know, to me, and I find that a lot of these officers totally, it takes them, it's unexpected, because they don't expect me, you know, when they look at me across the aisle from them asking the questions, they don't expect me to have this knowledge of, you know, of this insight of what they should be doing and what they did, and how the whole their whole approach should have been handled differently.
Right. So you're an expert when it comes to the gray area of policing.
Exactly. Exactly.
So what was your greatest victory in a court of law? Well,
you know, in the past couple of years, I second chaired Mr. DeSimone in two trial victories, and you know, they're very dear to my heart because, you know, anybody will tell you who, I mean, like all my clients, they'll tell you, they're like, you know, they know I'm very passionate. I advocate for them in a very passionate manner, and all my clients have my cell phone. You know, I get to know them on a personal level, and you know, to me, their issue is my issue. So one of them is the Lopez case, and Miss Lopez, this is a wrongful termination case, and she had cancer, and the company allegedly terminated her for her performance issues. So I was able to prove that she was a top performer the whole time she was there. In fact, even while she was going through chemotherapy, and it's funny because during the trial, I was able to get the documents because, of course, you know, in discovery, they didn't produce these documents, but I was able to get them another way with my expertise. So
that's yes. Right.
So at trial, you know, when we produced these documents, because, you know, we impeached them, and then we produced these documents because they were talking about her bad performance, they were like shocked. And it showed that the 3 months prior to her termination, she was the top performer. So, you know, it was you know, it was a very good, you know, that was a very good trial. However, just prior to the judge issuing a verdict, because it was a joint bench trial, Maria passed away. So it was very sad. She passed away, so she wasn't able to hear the verdict. She wasn't able to complete the case. So what happens in a case like that, when somebody dies prior to the trial finishing and a judge issuing a verdict in this case, we have the trial can only move forward based on economic damages. And here the economic damages were very low. They were like $15K. So what happens is, in this case, you can move forward with the successes and interest, which were 3 children. And, you know, most attorneys would not have pursued this case with such low economic damages because let's face it, these cases cost a lot of money to litigate and to try. So, but we felt that, you know what, the defendants, the way they treated Miss Lopez was so egregious that we have potential to get punitive damages. So that's what we were looking for. So in the end, at the second trial, with the bench trial with the judge was so appalled at their behavior because, mind you, they were all denying that they knew she had cancer. Meanwhile, she's walking around with a wig.
Come on.
She lost about 50 pounds. She could hardly move. Yeah, exactly. And we had witnesses that worked there that said, even her own sister worked there, and said she told the HR manager that she had cancer. So, and they all stood there and lied to the judge. And the judge actually said, I mean, this was a golden moment when he was like, giving us the verdict. He said, if it wasn't, that he found all of them not credible. And he said that the fact that they said that they didn't know she had cancer, it would be funny if it was not so pathetic. I mean, that's what he said. So we got $500K in punitive damages.
Wow.
Yeah. Plus 15K. But of course they appealed it. And recently, in the past month, we just won a published decision. So I'm very happy with that.
Wonderful.
Yes.
That is awesome. Yeah. That is awesome.
But the other case is really important because this was a wrongful termination, harassment. It was an African American phlebotomist who worked at UCLA, and she was wrongfully terminated. And she had complained of being harassed by like this clique in the lab, and they were calling her all kinds of names in Spanish: lazy, morena, vaga, stuff like that, right? And this was based on like negative stereotyping and stuff like that because of her race. So it's important to state that the Black Lives Matters movement is important, but it's also important in employment cases, because that's what's going on here. They were stereotyping her, and although she wrote complaints to her supervisors and stuff like that, she was ignored, and you had a lot of implicit bias going on here. So in the end, we were able to get her a $1.6 million jury verdict and $800K in attorney fees, and of course they appealed it, but we're confident that we're gonna prevail in this case as well.
Absolutely. That is awesome. Yeah, you guys are doing some great work. That's awesome.
We are. We definitely are, and we we can continue to we always say we're fighting a good fight. We're fighting that good fight for the clients. We really are, and we take on a lot of challenging cases that a lot of attorneys don't take. They're afraid to take on. But you know what? We do it because if we see that hey, what, this is a case where some really, really egregious conduct has occurred here, we're going to take it. We're going to take it.
Awesome. That's wonderful to hear.
Yeah.
And I think you touched on it a little bit earlier. How did your experiences as a police officer help your legal third eye as a lawyer? And I think you talked about it a little bit.
Yeah, well, of course, being able to, read and understand police jargon, because, there's a whole different language when it comes to policing, right? So I understand the police jargon. I understand how to read these witness statements. I understand how to read these excessive force reports. I understand how to, what their policies and procedures, are. I understand how these officers, I can look and read these reports and see, what they did and what they should have done. And I always say, and there's always a mistake. I know how to. I comb through these papers. I comb through every single document, and I find those mistakes. And then with these mistakes, along with my depositions, I take these depositions against these officers, and I just ask these follow-up questions, and for example, in a lot of the cases that we have, I'm sure you see on the news these car chases, and then when they finally get the car, you see the officers jumping out and running up to the car, and then they start shooting right away. Okay, well, guess what? That's not police policy and procedure. You're not supposed to run up on a car and start shooting at it, because you don't know, who's in, I mean, in most cases, you don't know what that person is capable of. I mean, and let's face it, you have to look at the totality of the circumstances. What type of, what is this guy fleeing from? Is he or she, are they fleeing from, did they just commit a murder? Did they just commit a robbery? Or is this just a mere traffic infraction? You have to look at everything, at the big picture, and even so, you still always have to approach these jobs and these incidents, with safety in mind, and with using your police training and policies and procedures. You have to, and that entails what? The car stopped, take cover, issue commands from a distance. That's how that is the proper way to handle these jobs. And, timeless. I mean, like, we have seen so many cases where, the cars stop, they run up, and we have seen cases where, the people, whoever it is, they come out with their hands up, and then they just shoot them just like that. Because they're so hyped up in the moment, and what it is that, when you don't approach these, as an officer, you don't approach these cases, with using your safety and training, when you don't keep that in mind, you don't use it. What happens is you run up like that, and then all of a sudden you see this person getting out the car, and you realize, excuse my French, oh shit, I'm exposed. I can get shot or killed. So what happens is they get nervous, they're exposed. The slightest movement, they start shooting. And what is the movement? The hands up. I mean,
what you're supposed to do.
Exactly. And, I've worked in, as a police officer in New York City, I've worked in high crime areas. I've worked in the 44th precinct, which was the highest, when I worked there, that was considered like an A house, that's the highest crime in the whole 5 boroughs, that precinct there. And it was the smallest radius. Oh yeah. So I worked in that precinct. And, when I first became a police officer, and also I worked in Harlem. And, I've done car chases. I've responded to robberies in progress, burglaries, suspicious persons, all types of cases. And, I pulled out my gun hundreds of times. I've never shot my gun in the line of duty, because why? Because I approached every single job I went on. I approached it, keeping in mind my safety, my training, and preserving, and my oath. I always kept in mind my oath. And what is my oath? To protect and serve. And I always, to me, not only do I have to keep myself safe, I got to keep these people safe. Whether it's the person who I'm confronting, and then the surrounding people, whoever's surrounding me, I have to keep them in mind as well, right? So, with my, given my training and my experience, I know how they should approach these cases. And, so therefore, since I know how they should approach it, I'm able to dissect how they approached it, and, and pick out what they did wrong, and then question them as to, hey, the car stopped, officer so-and-so, once the car stopped, you ran up to the car with your gun drawn, correct? We have it on video, so he has to say yes, right? So yes, correct. Officer, is the way you approach this car, is that according to your police training? They know it's not. So it's like, you got to say no, because that's not the way they're trained. So, I have that background that, other attorneys don't have, because, I've experienced, going, the same thing that these officers out there experience, I've experienced as well. So I know what it's like to be in a car chase, to ultimately, for the car to ultimately stop. I know what it's like to run up 6 flights of stairs, in pursuit of a man on a gun, man on the roof, man on the suspicious man on the roof with a gun, and I know all the thoughts that go through your mind, and it's a scary situation, but you have to always keep your training and safety, at the forefront. Otherwise, you're going to run into problems, and that's what's happening across the country.
They're throwing caution to the wind. They're not following
Absolutely.
protocol.
Right. Absolutely. Totally.
Native New Yorker and my good friend Nina Nesbitt chimes in, and she says she loves this. So she's watching the show. Nina Nesbitt is,
Awesome.
and she says she loves this, and we're glad you're watching us today, Nina. Counselor, the defense in the George Floyd case said that Mr. Floyd's death was a multifactorial process. I feel deflecting from the 9 minutes and 29 seconds of a knee at a 90-degree pressure, 90 pressure pounds on his neck. My personal analogy is Bob got attacked by a shark, but his ingrown toenail killed him. How do you feel about the multifactorial process argument?
Well, first of all, I think, as a defense attorney, you have to do whatever you can, and seriously, throw everything up against the wall and see what sticks. So this was just, his defense attorney, trying to deflect from the overwhelming evidence that Chauvin killed George Floyd by depriving him of oxygen. He put his knee on his back. He put him in a handcuffed, prone position. All of this contributed to, the killing of George Floyd. And then we have the great expert witness testimony of Dr. Tobin, the pulmonologist, who explained, how exactly Chauvin's actions deprived George Floyd of the oxygen required for his brain and his heart. And then you had Dr. Rich, the cardiologist, who explained how strong George Floyd's heart was, and that, it stopped because of the lack of oxygen. So again, as a defense attorney, I understand his position. He had to say and do whatever he could to try to defend his client. But, with this overwhelming evidence, he was climbing an uphill battle.
Thank you.
Sure.
I see it from a different standpoint now. How is the way you see the world change since being a New York police officer and a Los Angeles attorney at law?
Well, I grew up in the South Bronx projects, and growing up in the projects, you see a lot of tragedies, injustices, you see crime, and I'm one of 10 children. So being one of 10 children living in the projects, you learn how to survive. But at the same time, my parents instilled morals and values in us. So we were able to maintain our morals and values, amongst all this, chaos and tragedy that was, that was a daily event once we stepped out of our apartment in the projects. So, I had hoped that, that today, that these injustices and this police brutality would be a thing of the past. However, given what's been going on, in these past couple of years since I've been a civil rights attorney, and I've witnessed and I've become an advocate for clients who have been victims of these injustices, it's become crystal clear that our work is far from done. Far from done. So what I'm hoping is that with the use of cell phones, social media, that we shed a light on the senseless deaths and senseless, police brutality, and also, I think it's important to create a social awareness, that everybody has to get involved, on the legislative level. You got to get involved, because that's the way we're going to make the changes.
Thank you. Thank you for your service. We really, I thank you for your. I deem you and Mr. DeSimone superheroes.
Yes.
We met on a Facebook post about Dante Wright,
right.
A military police officer who was a guest on my show. Said the gun is on the strong hand and the taser is on the weak hand, and there being a significant weight between both. As a retired police officer, how do you feel about this critical era? And you mentioned to me that you did have something prepared, so I'm going to go ahead and give you the wheel on this.
Absolutely. Well, besides the fact that, that there's a significant weight difference, the tasers look different. You have a taser's bright yellow and a gun is black. Okay. And besides that, Potter was a 26-year veteran. She was a union representative, and she was a training officer. And as a training officer, this is one of the things that you train other police officers. And the whole idea of, make sure that you position your taser on your weak side, and you position your gun on your strong side, so that you don't confuse the two. I mean, that's one of the, I'm sure that's one of the things that she has trained officers on. Okay, that's important. So, and then, to me, it's hard to believe, given all officers have to go through firearms training, right? Yes. So in your firearms training, right, you're taught to whether you're using a taser or using a gun, you're taught to line up your sights. So, with you have the gun out, and you're supposed to line up your sights. And lining up your sights entails, guess what? Looking at the gun. So, in lining up your sights and looking at the gun, then you aim at the target, and then you're going to shoot, right? So what I wanted to point out was the fact that I looked at the video regarding Dante Wright, and in the video, at approximately 43 seconds in, Dante Wright starts to jump. He's jumping in the car, correct? Yes. And then 48 seconds in, you see Officer Potter. She has the gun pulled out straight. Okay, so when a gun is pulled out straight, it's in your line of sight because you're lining up your sights. Because officers aren't trained to just pull out your gun and start shooting. That's not what you're trained to do. So you can see at 48 seconds, her gun is pulled out in front of her, and she says, "I'll tase you," right? And then at 52 seconds in, Officer Potter, still with the gun straight out in front of her, she's like saying, "I'll tase you." And then 55 seconds in, Officer Potter, she fires the gun, hitting Dante, and you hear Dante saying, "Ah," and then the car drives away. So, based on me viewing this video, Officer Potter had about at least 6 seconds to realize that she had her gun in her hand, not her taser. And I'd like to give it a benefit of doubt, but let's face it, it takes a second to realize that, what you have in your hand is black and not yellow. So therefore, you have a gun in your hand and not a taser. Mm. And that's my analogy of that whole video.
Wow. Ooh. So I spoke with another friend of mine that is a retired police officer, and right. She mentioned to me that they were going to probably try to use a tunnel vision defense. And she explained a little bit about what the tunnel vision defense is for the Dante Wright case. What do you think?
Well, here they're trying to assert that it was an accidental shooting, because she mistook, her taser for a gun. But, given the fact that she's a 26-year veteran, she's a training officer, she's a union representative, okay? There's a difference between the weight. There's a difference between where you position the gun versus the taser on the gun belt. There's a difference in the color. One is yellow and one is black, okay? And then, most important, her firearms training. That's extremely important because you're trained to line up your sights and aim the gun. So given all of those factors, I think it's going to be a hard defense to prove. It's an uphill battle, for sure.
Uphill battle on that one. Okay. As a retired officer of the law counselor, per George Floyd, what can you tell me about the dangers of the prone position?
Well, the dangers of the prone position have been known for decades. Okay. And there's been hundreds of cases of, positional asphyxiation. Once you have, the suspect in handcuffs, okay, you put him, on the side, or you sit him up. Okay. Here, putting George Floyd, in the prone position was compounded by the fact that Chauvin had his knee on his back, okay, pressing his face up against the concrete. It all compounded how George Floyd died. And then the bottom line here was that the officers lacked compassion, and they treated George Floyd in an inhumane manner. Once, I mean, there's a terminology. Once you have someone in your custody and care, you have a duty to that person, okay? And you have a duty to protect and serve. And, the duty is to take appropriate action while protecting and serving. And here, the appropriate action here was to, provide medical attention to George Floyd, because he was clearly in need of medical attention. And they did not do that. They ignored it.
That was the hardest video I had to watch when I watched
Absolutely.
the body camera
Absolutely.
video. That was the hardest video I had to watch.
It was very hard to watch because, to me, it was very hard for me to watch. You know why? Because as a police officer, and you have one of these questions are here that you have for me about. Is it the next question?
About the psychological exams?
No, about the fact that, as a police officer, did I, go along? Did I go along with, the code of blue silence, the blue wall of silence, or exactly, or did I, do the right thing? And you know what? I did the right thing. I did the right thing, and I can't tell you, and because of it, I walked many foot posts. And even like foot posts in blizzards because, I didn't go along with the program. And I was the officer who, I'm not going to work with somebody who I knew, was abusive and did these sorts of things. And if I saw it happening, I would interject and I would say, hey, that's enough. He's good. He's cuffed already. He's good. That's it. Enough. So I would intervene. I would not go along with stuff like that. Never. It's not right. It's not right. And I don't know how these officers, can treat people in that manner and then go home to their families or, and sleep at night. I don't know. I don't get it. I really don't.
Thank God. Thank God for you and for your empathy and your compassion. And I'm sure it was maybe a lot of the good things that your mom and dad put in you when you were growing up.
Exactly. Because, to me, no matter of what, whether the person, what their ethnicity was, what their race was, I treated everybody with respect and dignity. And that's how it always was. Whether the homeless person in the street or a rich person from Riverdale, because I worked in the Riverdale area, in the Bronx. And that's a very high class area. I treated everybody the same. And that's just the way it is.
Yeah, I was driving in traffic the other day and a turtle was in the middle of a busy road. I couldn't stop, but I made sure that I lined my car up so I went across the turtle as not to hit him and I was worried about the poor turtle. I couldn't come back, but I was worried about him. And when I did travel the road again, I didn't see any, turtle. I didn't see his demise. So I said, well, thank God somebody must have stopped and got him out of the road. And I just think about that. And I think about, God, I had empathy for a turtle and this man was on the pavement and they didn't have empathy for him. And that's a person with no soul to me. I don't understand.
Exactly. Exactly. And even when I, as a police officer, when I was out there back in New York, even when it came to dealing with cases with juveniles and stuff like that, I always took the extra step, to that, because an officer, let's for example, let's say the kid stole a candy bar, and sometimes if they're not the right color and they stole the candy bar, the store's going to want to press charges, right? So I had a believe it or not, I had a case one time where a dollar shirt was stolen. And they pressed charges against this young woman.
Lord.
Okay. Yeah, exactly. She was Hispanic, but that was the way it was. That was the way it was. So I was the type of cop that I would bring this kid home to his parents, and I would talk with him with the parents, and I would let the kid know, okay, that this is I'm giving you a pass here, okay, because I had the discretion to do that. Okay, I'm giving you a pass here. But if I ever run across you again, I would let them know, because we had a juvenile hall called Spofford that all the kids were terrified of. So I would let them know, I'm going to take you to Spofford. So, I never, ever, ever, all the kids that I did that with, I never, ever, ever ran across them again. And it's funny because I'm Facebook friends with a woman who I brought her daughter home. And, so throughout the years, recently she says, you know what, I just want to thank you again for what you did for my daughter, because, if it wasn't for that, who knows, what path she would have taken. Now, her daughter is a very successful, went to college, graduated,
Awesome.
master's degree, and has a very successful life. So, so it felt good for me to get that validation.
Yeah. That was an awesome thing you did.
Right. Because, I believe, children are the future of America. So, whenever I was able to, make a positive impact and try to help a youth, to go, to go on the right path rather than the wrong path, I did. And, and I was even as an attorney now, when I have cases with juveniles, they have my cell phone, and, and they call me up on the phone, when they have issues. Sometimes they have issues with their parents, So, I put on my counselor hat, and that's just the person that I am, because, because I take that extra step, and and I want to, because I want to get to know my clients. I want to get to know them as people. I want to get to know their families, because I feel, if whether we settle the case or if it goes to trial, I want to be able to, to really, really advocate for them, and to really be able to, tell their story to the jury. So, and to me, the only way you can do that is by knowing your clients.
Absolutely. Yes, ma'am. I do agree. And Nina Hollingsworth chimes in. She says, what should we as parents tell our children, adult and youth, not only about what is happening to people of color in this day, but how to stay safe and what to do when you see a situation? People have been told that they are interfering with an issue in progress, and oftentimes have their phones taken. What do you suggest?
Yeah. Well, I definitely want to validate what you're saying, Nina, because you're right. This is going on, especially with the BLM, protests and stuff like that. We have tons of clients who have been like hands up, shot in the face with projectiles and all kinds of stuff, and like really bad injuries. So what I want to say is, this is what we need to tell our children. What we need to tell our children is that, it's okay to witness these events from a distance. And I stress that, from a distance. And it's okay to videotape it from a distance. Don't get close to the event. And if they are, told by an officer to stand back, stand back. Listen to all the commands, but from a safe distance. And by all means, dial 911. Dial 911. Definitely.
Call the police on the police.
But do not interfere. Do not interfere.
Yes, ma'am.
Never interfere.
Yes, ma'am. That's Nina picked my pocket. She's always been smarter than I have. So she asked a question I have for later, but good. I like her question better than mine.
But also, but if your children are of driving age, because that was one of the questions. If the children are of driving age, it's important. It's important for you to tell them to tell them that if they're. This is what I tell my children. If you're ever pulled over by the cop, and it's happened with my children, you're pulled over by a police officer. As soon as you're pulled over, dial my number, put it on speaker, put your hands on the steering wheel in plain view, and once the officer comes up to the window, you obey every single command in a calm manner, and that's how you get past this in a safe manner. That's the only way.
Awesome. Yep, definitely. Cooler heads prevail, and so it takes two to tango. So if you're not resisting, which that's not always been the case, but that is the way to go. The way to go is
you gotta be ultra calm. You have to, and believe me, I have adult sons, and my adult sons have been profiled and pulled over, cars tossed, the whole 9 yards. I mean, it's happened, but, they weren't hurt. Thank God, because, they remain calm, yes, officer, very polite. Yes, officer, keep their hands always in plain view, and whatever, when they issue a command, okay, officer, my registration and insurance is in my glove compartment. Would you like to go get it? Because, you reach for it, that's not a good thing, right?
Absolutely.
We've had people reaching for stuff and getting shot. So, ask permission, give them the option. Hey, would you like to, you're welcome to, please go ahead and grab my license and my registration insurance card from my glove compartment. Definitely.
Amen.
We got to keep our children safe. We have to.
We do. We have to. We didn't have these kind of problems when we were growing up. And it is a different time. And so it's totally conversations that we have to have. Definitely.
Total conversations. Yes, definitely. Yeah.
Police officers are required to take psychological exams. But if I understand right, there's really no pass and fail. Violent prisoners are administered the PCLR or the psychopathy checklist revised, designed to measure whether that inmate is a psychopath. The PCLR holds so much weight that it decides what prisoners are paroled, what kinds of sentence a prisoner will receive, and even if a prisoner receives the death penalty or not. Does the psychological testing for police officers need to be revamped? And how are sociopath and psychopath police officers like Derek Chauvin slipping past the curve?
Well, when I became, I'm going to age myself right now. So when I became a police officer in 1981, back then, we were only required to take a psychological written exam. And if there was any questions about how you answered this psychological written exam, then you would be sent to see a doctor, whether it be a psychiatrist, psychologist. I'm not sure because, I passed the written exam, so I never had to. However, since then, it has changed, and I understand that officers now, they're required to take the written exam along with, seeing a psychologist or psychiatrist or whatever. But, my opinion is that, this whole psychological process should be more in depth. This whole psychological screening should definitely be more in depth. And when I say more in depth, I mean that it shouldn't just be, oh, you visit the psychologist, on a one-time basis, and and he evaluates you for an hour, and okay, he's good to go. Check. I think that once the officer passes, has this initial encounter with the psychologist, that they should be, because don't forget, once a police officer becomes a police officer, they're on probation for a period of time. Mine was 6 months, but I understand after that it's changed and it's a year probation. So in that year probation, I think they should, be evaluated, based on, their performance in the field, and go back there and see it. And if there's any question about how they're performing in the field, they should go back and be evaluated by a psychiatrist or psychologist again. So, that to me is an important factor. And because, my experience as a police officer is, in every precinct, you always know, there's always somebody who, they're a little off, right? And you wonder, how the heck did they get here? And sometimes you hear them joking about, oh yeah, man, they had to go back and see the psychiatrist, a couple of times so they can pass them, right? So, these same officers, they get involved in incidents happen, and then, and they get performance evaluations, because don't forget, they're, by their superior, as an officer, your sergeant evaluates you. So they get performance evaluations. So, even the sergeants who evaluate them, they know what's going on. Everybody in the whole precinct knows what's going on. And then incidents happen. So instead of, holding these officers accountable and screening them out of off the job, they pushed it under the rug, and these superior officers, they pass them, and they just push them along. And that is how Officer Chauvin, to me, that is how he got pushed along. Because don't forget, I mean, I believe it was like he had 18 allegations against him.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, okay, maybe a couple of them, were legitimately, unfounded. But I'm sure, because you don't murder a person, while you're being videotaped in front of, a crowd of people with that smug expression on your face. Okay, on a one-time basis. He's been doing this and getting away with it for years. He just got caught this time.
I felt the same way.
He got caught this time, red-handed.
I felt the same way.
Thank God.
Thank God. That's right. Thank God he got caught.
Thank God.
I'm going to show just a little bit of the clip.
Remember in the initial police report prior to this video being released, they had explained it away another way. How, oh yeah, he was being they had to apply excessive force because he was not cooperating and stuff like that, and then he died. So they lied in the police report. They didn't say what really happened.
They did.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what happens a lot. That's what happens a lot. When there's no video, the officers write whatever they want in the report to what is called CYA, cover their ass.
Right here in South Carolina, where Walter Scott was shot, if there was no video, I was in the barbershop and I was telling my barber, and who is Mackey's barbershop. Yeah, he's an awesome barber in my South Carolina. But my barber, I was telling him, I said, if we had no video, I would have been sitting here saying, man, Walter Scott shouldn't have tried to take the weapon from the police officer. I would have been saying that, based on, how I felt about who the police were, as in accordance to, corresponding with citizens. But then when I saw this, I was like, it was like something totally brand new to me. It scared me as a grown man. I said, I never knew that they'll do something like this. I was just like,
exactly.
And then to plant the weapon on him, to put the weapon down there with it, and the guy is running for his life. And that, I thank God for videotape. Yeah,
actually, and I have to share with you, we had a case, about 5 years ago where, we had a guy, his name is Brendan Glenn, and, he was Cinco de Mayo, so yesterday was the anniversary of his death, and, he was, getting his drink on, at the local taverns or whatever. He was getting a little bit loud and boisterous, so, the bouncer bounced him out and stuff like that, so some officers got involved, and, ultimately what happened is that, the officer actually, got into a physical altercation with him. And then Brendan Glenn was on all fours. He was on all fours on the floor. And the officer actually took a step back, shot him in the back, and killed him.
Oh my God.
Exactly. However, of course, initially in his paperwork, he said that Brendan Glenn was going after his gun, his partner's gun. So that's why he had to shoot him. But guess what? The local bar right there had a video.
Oh.
Which was produced afterwards. So of course he lied in the report initially. Then once the video was produced and it was all over the media, everybody realized the video was produced, and they see him taking a step back and shooting him. I mean, so it was a horrible case, And of course, we demanded that the DA press charges against this officer, and even the chief of police. Actually, and this very rarely happens, the chief of police also called for charges against this officer. But however, the DA did not want to prosecute this officer and did not.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable. My classmate chimes in, Lothario Vanish. He says if there was no video, that is the case for thousands of Black unarmed people. The country has always had a hatred slash fair for the kidnapped African. Wow.
Well, it's very interesting that Lothario, did I pronounce his name right?
Yeah, Lothario.
It's very interesting.
He's a great philosopher. He's a great philosopher. He's a friend of mine. So you said Lothario or Lothario, you're right.
Lothario. Okay, so it's very interesting that you bring up that because, one of the questions that you gave me later on, that was my answer. My answer is, so, if you want to, that's the next one. The shootings, lethal chokeholds, the beatings. You can ask the question and then I'll give you my answer.
Yeah, the shootings, the lethal chokeholds, the beatings, the harassment, racial profiling. What is the trend or tendency to be generally more aggressive when dealing with Black suspects?
Well, and what did I say? A big part of these instances is fear. Fear. Okay? And then you have innate fear and created fear. And when I say innate fear, I mean, believe it or not, some of these officers, they're just afraid of Black people or people of color. They're just afraid of them, and of course, a lot of people, attribute it to, so many years of people of color and Black people being portrayed on television as robbers and murderers and stuff like that. But I think, what? We're all educated people. And you know what? It's television. Hello.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. And when I remember when I was in the police academy, I actually had, and to me, I think this should have been a criteria that should have, eliminated them from being police officers. I actually had, fellow officers in the police academy that they never had any interaction with Blacks or people of color. Okay? So they were openly fearful of them. Okay? I mean, and to me, like, are you kidding me? And they come from somewhere else, communities where, it's they live in white communities, they're white officers, and you're going to come over here, in the city, which predominantly, Black and Hispanics, and people of color, and you're going to be doing policing here when you're afraid of these people? What kind of sense does that make? It made no sense whatsoever. And I remember once we got into NSU, which is after we finished the police academy, we go into another second phase of training. And I remember, we would be given like, mandatory foot posts, as well as days when we would ride in a car with a detective field training officer. So, of course, our sergeant was a white guy. So as soon as I walked in, I would see a white police officer who I know is terrified of Black people or people of color. His name would be on a foot post. Originally, would be on a foot post in a bad area, in a high crime area, which was predominantly Hispanic or Blacks. And he would be on that foot post, and I would be, maybe in a car with a field training officer, and they would scratch out my name, put it on the foot post, and put his name in there. Because of course, as soon as he saw his name up there, he'd go to the sergeant and say, "Oh, I'm afraid." So, in turn, and to me, I was at home. I loved it. I would walk these 4 to 12 foot posts, and the officers, "Hey, Sabater, how you doing?" I mean, we were buddies, we were friends, and they would actually these people would actually tell the criminals, "Hey, listen, no, Sabater's working tonight, so don't do anything stupid. Okay, Sabater's working tonight. You want to do something stupid, do it over there. Don't do it over here, right?" So that was the innate fear. Then you have the created fear. And the created fear is what we talked about before, how these police officers, they create the fear by approaching these situations without using their police training and tactics. Like, for example, a car, you have a car chase, the car stops, you run up on the car. So what are you doing? You're creating that fear. Because what it is, because I mean, let's face it, somebody's coming out of a car, you're exposed, you're going to be in fear. So then what happens is the slightest movement, they're going to shoot. So that's to create a fear. But then again, you have number 3, racism. And yes, you do have officers that are outright racist. Outright racist. And, I remember when I first came on in 1981, a lot of these officers that they were from like the Knapp Commission era. So a lot of them, they had this whole, they would speak about, scales and use the N-word and stuff like that. And I would say, you know what? I'm not okay with that, or spics. I'm like, just because I was wearing the same uniform as them, they thought I would go along with it. So, I had a reputation for, oh, no, you got to be respectful when you're around Sabater. She doesn't like that. So, I didn't like that, so I didn't go along with that. But then you have these officers that are openly, that they're racist, and and because they're racist, what they do is, anytime they have the chance to profile a Black or person of color, they're going to do it. And as soon as regardless of the situation that they're approaching, they're going to approach it with their gun drawn because, off the bat, they don't like you because you're Black, Hispanic, or some other person of color. And that's just the way it is. That's just the way it is. And those are the kind of those are the kind of officers that we need to get rid of.
I so agree. Those are strange bedfellows, officers and racism. That's not a good mixture.
No, it's not.
Whatever.
It's not because everybody should be treated with dignity and respect, regardless of who they are. It's and to me, I always, I took that oath to protect and serve, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to protect and serve, and I abided by my oath, and believe it or not, most officers do abide by the oath.
Yeah. Oh, I know.
Most of them do.
I have friends that are great police officers.
Exactly.
And they have if they were doctors, they'd have a great bedside manner. They use de-escalation skills. They know how to talk to people.
Absolutely.
And those are the things you have to be a master psychologist, because you've got deadly force that
exactly.
you can use.
Listen, can I tell you? Even when they talk about I have come across situations with emotionally disturbed persons, which we call EDPs. And I've come upon situations where, I come on the scene, the person just finished, stabbing their father, and I'm at the doorway, and the person's there with the knife in the hand. Okay? And what is it? I speak to them in a humane way, whatever their name is, Billy, hey, what's going on? Oh, I'm upset. Oh, what's going on? Why are you upset? So I talked to him, you know what? Can you put the knife down so we can talk? Okay, make a long story short, I'm walking out of there with this person in handcuffs, taking them, because that's how it was back then. We would transport them to the hospital, to put them on a 72-hour hold, And I've even had situations where, where it was my sector, and you have the dispatcher saying, be advised that that in previous officers have been taken to the hospital when responding to this location. The emotionally disturbed person, or the EDP, is violent. So, I remember there was one particular incident where the guy was like 6'2" and muscles like. And so when I get on the scene, it's hysterical, because when I get on the scene, it was one of these complexes that they had their own security. So, when I got there, it was me and my partner, and, everybody just stepped to the side for me to walk in. And then I go into the elevator, and then when it reaches the floor, everybody steps to the side for me to walk in. So, I walk in, and, and I'm talking to the guy, and the guy's, telling me about how he hit his dad on the head with a hammer. How his dad is, he's trying to boss him around. And I'm identifying with him. I'm saying, you know what? Yeah, my dad tries to boss me around too. Like, oh yeah. And you know what I do? I go see my friend who's a doctor at the hospital. Oh yeah, hey, by the way, you want to go see him? Yeah, I do. I said, the only problem is, I can't put you in my police car unless I put handcuffs on you. Is it okay if I handcuff? Oh, sure. Turn around, handcuffs on. Here I am, and I'm 5 feet tall. I'm 5 feet tall, walking out with the handcuffs. Everybody's looking, me walking out with this guy who's so violent.
Yeah.
And put officers in the hospital, walking out with him, with his hands behind his back, cuffed, no problem. And that's about communication. And most of these jobs, communication will get you everywhere.
Encoding, it's the magic of encoding and decoding.
Absolutely. And de-escalating. I mean, you
De-escalating.
can be in the most violent situation. You can de-escalate it with words.
My good friend Lothario Vanish has chimed in. He says, how does the cancer of racism, sexism affect the judicial system, both from a lawyer's perspective and as a defendant accused of a crime?
Well, when it comes, depending on the situation, when it comes to these situations with racism and sexism, it's sad, but, you have to build your case and you have to have a lot of evidence to be able, as an attorney I'm talking about, to be able to like win these cases. I mean, because like anything else, it's your client's word against, the defendant's word. And a lot of times in these cases, like in typical employment cases, they gather up tons of people who are going to say negative things about your client. Okay, so you have to be able to really, really, go through all the documents, go through, all the litigation process of deposing these, taking depositions of key people, getting experts, to show how your client was harmed in this situation, and these are hard cases to prove, but you can be successful in these cases, and it all goes about, but first of all, you have to have a client that, believe it or not, that is going to be able to come across well, and the jury can relate to the client as well as relating to you as an attorney. So there's a lot of different factors involved, but the main thing is, being able to prove that case. And of course, in civil cases, it's a preponderance of evidence, but in a criminal case, it's beyond a reasonable doubt. So in that case, from a lawyer's perspective, like there was an example that I heard recently where, in giving opening statements, the defense attorney was talking about, how there's a whole bottle of pills, and there's a whole bunch of pills in there, and all you need is one pill of reasonable doubt, and that's it. You know what I'm saying?
That's right.
Right. So it's harder to prove. In a criminal case, it's harder to prove. But that's why when good lawyering comes into play, good lawyering, good evaluation of the facts. You have to be able to take good depositions. You got to be able to look at all the pictures. You got to be able to send out good investigators. You have to be able to canvass the area, get to know your client. Get witnesses, get character witnesses. If the person is deceased, get character. There's a lot of things that you have to do.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor, I'm not going to keep you all day because I know you're busy. I'm so glad that you came here with us. I'm going to take you to the last 3 questions.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I'm going to take you to the last 3 questions. We had some other things, but I'm glad it went exactly like it was supposed to go, because I believe a lot of people are learning from this, and yes. I want you to come back. I don't want you to say, that Cornell Johnson kept me tied up all day. I want you to come back. Yeah. How does Carmen Sabater, attorney, differ from Carmen Sabater, the New York Police Department police officer?
Well, Carmen Sabater, the NYPD police officer, didn't have the knowledge, and the legal acumens to be able to that I have today. Okay, so that's why I'm able to fight for justice and fight the good fight for my clients. However, Carmen Sabater, the NYPD police officer, and Carmen Sabater, the attorney, both always, what was and is always the type of person that we're always fighting the good fight, always.
With the gray areas of the law, counselor, um, the lapse of morals and the ethics of some of America's lawmakers, how can we as Americans help to rewrite the narrative?
Well, I think the most important thing is to vote, keep in touch with your representatives, your local representatives on issues of social justice. Help pass the George Floyd Policing Act. And then if you in your local states, I'm sure they have local laws that need to be passed as well. Over here, we have 52.1. Which is, and then we have the decertification process. Get involved in that because we want to get rid of these rogue officers. Who participate who have been convicted of serious crimes or fired. We don't want them to be able to go to another state or and become a police officer again. We want to make sure that time's up, buddy, no more. So in situations like that, and also take a moment, call, do a tweet, engage in community issues. Be a part of the solution. Actually, if you can, even donate $10, to good causes, that's advancing all our, political agendas to help, decertification of these bad cops and to help, with things like qualified immunity, which is on a federal level, and our local state level, police laws. So it's very important that we get involved. You got to get involved.
Thank you, ma'am. Counselor, from the inception of your career as a New York police officer and now a Los Angeles attorney, what would you say about your journey so far?
Well, I'm very grateful for my my police training, as an NYPD police officer, because of my police training, now I'm able to I have some really in-depth insight into these police cases. And so as a civil rights attorney, I can rely on that experience when we're litigating these cases and be able to, to find, the theme of the case and to find out what really happened and to move forward in proving our client's cases and cases of this excessive, brutality and deadly force, which is, unnecessary, brutal, and it's unreasonable. So, because of the fact that I have this knowledge of, and I've experienced, doing these types of jobs, I can better advocate for people, when they've been wronged, in these types of cases. And I'm so grateful for that. I really am.
Thank you. I just want to say I'm so thankful to you, a civil rights attorney, Sabater, for coming to join us today. I pray that God keeps allowing you to fight the good fight. I pray that He gives you an eagle eye so that you keep finding those needles in the haystack in those reports. I just pray for your continued success and also for the Simone law firm that you work for. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us today. And we look to see you. We want to see you back soon. Anytime you want to come back on this platform, you let me know.
For sure.
Anytime.
I would absolutely love to because this is the way we have to get this out there to the public. We have to, and we have to educate them. We have to especially the young people, because the young people now, to me, the Black Lives Matter movement has awoken something in these young people, and guess what? They're on fire, and we have to keep that going. We got to keep that fire going.
We got
this. Let's fighting good fight.
Oh wow, I tell you, I've so enjoyed this show. I've learned so much today. I want to thank my good friend Nina Nesbitt, my good friend Lothario Vanish for chiming in with those awesome questions that they asked today. And I want to thank all of you that are going to be watching it, and please tag some people, let them get this information. If you're in the California area, hey, let me tell you, if you need a good civil rights lawyer, civil rights attorney Carmen Sabater, the law firm of D. Simone. Did I say it right?
It's V. James D. Simone Law.
V. James D. Simone Law. Maybe we'll be able to have him. And
he would love to. He loves this.
Listen. Anytime you guys want to schedule, let me know. I'll be glad to have you back on the show.
Awesome.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you once again for taking time on your busy schedule. Everybody that's been watching, God's blessings on you. This is the end of our show today on TMC. Until next time.
Thank you.
Thank you, my dear, for coming today.